Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. It's media day for the Lakers, the official start of training camp, a blockbuster deal out west, and the Lakers quietly admit they need more size. All of that next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, it's always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where over 25,000 subscribers are excited to see what happens at Media Day today in El Segundo this afternoon at the facility, the official start of the season, the beginning of training camp. There's officially going to be basketball to talk about. We'll get to all of it next, because a big blockbuster trade in the West over the weekend, or at least the unofficial blockbuster. I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So a lot to cover today, including the questions of whether or not the Lakers need more size up front. They push back a little bit on that notion, Andy, on last week on Wednesday, the press conference, and then very quickly said off the record that, yes, we need some of that.
Push back against it. We'll discuss some of the details. Listeners and viewers may recall on Friday's show when I said that JJ Redick crushed 95% of his press conference with Rob Pelinka on Wednesday. The 5% that I was referring to that he did not crush was this section being asked about the need for more size, because he was very transparently.
We'll talk about it.
Transparently getting into a semantics battle, trying to avoid what he clearly knew he was being asked.
So we'll get into that in a moment, and we will try at least to get into some Austin Reeves talk, because Rob Pelinka also last week, after we went on to 710 ESPN, the flagship radio station of the Lakers, he was talking
where,
about,
by the way, you can hear Lakers talk every Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time, hosted by me. So, and this show after Media Day should be chock full of really, really good things to talk about. My guests,
as the kids say,
my guests are going to be Pete Zayas from Lakers Film Room Podcast and Eric Pincus from Bleacher Report. So good stuff.
So, so Pelinka talking a lot about Austin Reeves, both at that press conference, certainly afterwards. We'll get into that. If not for today's show, certainly through the week. But the huge news of the weekend, and obviously anything that impacts the Western Conference impacts the Lakers, was the blockbuster deal, or the outlines of a blockbuster deal, not yet consummated, at least as of Sunday night, between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the New York Knicks, with the primary pieces being sent around: Karl-Anthony Towns to New York, Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo back to Minnesota. And the perception, I think, on the street, Andy, at least, is that, we'll set aside the Eastern Conference portion of this, at least insofar as it impacts the Knicks momentarily. It might make Mitchell Robinson a guy that comes on the market, which we can talk about. But the Western Conference changes significantly with this deal. A lot of people seem to think Minnesota kind of automatically gets worse in this deal, bringing in Randle and DiVincenzo for and sending out Towns. I don't know, but it changes the Timber. At the very least, it changes a team that seemed to be ascending pretty quickly.
I agree with you. I am not 100% sure how I feel this trade makes the Wolves better, worse, about the same, whatever. It is ironic that the general consensus on this deal, and I understand that some of this is because people are dumbfounded at the idea that this team has, made the Western Conference Finals, their best season in 20 years, and this is the time where you make a big move breaking that up.
Right.
Clearly,
money, because good money move makes them better, makes them worse, whatever. It's clearly
right.
One is designed to reorganize their finances, which isn't necessarily bad, and a lot of teams are going to end up doing this sort of thing. But like you say, the timing is like, if you're a Wolves fan, you're like, come on.
Right. I mean, it is ironic even within that context, just remembering that ever since the Wolves acquired Rudy Gobert, the overwhelming majority of the punditry has been saying at some point they're going to have to move Karl-Anthony Towns because they're not going to be able to afford to keep this team intact. It's going to be too expensive, particularly upon adding Gobert. Cat's going to have more value, yada, yada, yada. Again, acknowledging the context of what makes it ironic now, but still, there had been an awful lot of people shouting for this move to finally be made that are now angry that the move got made. But as far as, what this does for the Wolves moving forward, it's truly too early to know. But what I think is interesting about this for the Lakers is that is their opening night matchup. And I'm not 100% sure that Julius Randle is going to be available for the start of training camp. I saw a report, I want to say from Tim Bontemps from ESPN, that there is confidence that he will be ready during training camp, but we don't know if he'll be on any type of restriction during practice.
For people who may have forgotten, he had shoulder surgery last year that cost him the back half of his season.
So, where he ends up in terms of his timetable, I don't know. But either way, there is so much for this team to figure out in a very short amount of time, which could be a very good thing for the Lakers come opening night, them being a team that no matter what you think of them, yes, they have to figure out a new system with JJ Redick, but at least they don't have to figure out each other.
Well, what's interesting about it too is like you wouldn't Minnesota. So much of the reaction to this is basically a Rorschach test on whether or not you think Julius Randle's a good player. And I like Randle. I recognize some of the flaws and all that stuff. I like Randle more than a lot of other people do, clearly. And I think he's a really good player. And I think an angry Julius Randle is a potentially good one. I think DiVincenzo helps them a lot. But that said, like, this could sort of incrementally make them worse. It could make them significantly worse. Ant and Gobert are such kind of unusual players to kind of fit things around. I'm not going to pretend that I know what this is going to look like. I need to see it. But let's say it makes them a little bit worse at the beginning of the season, like you say. Normally, that's not a huge deal, except we talked about this a little bit last week and laid out the beginning of the Lakers season. It is insanely difficult. So anything that can happen that adjusts that in any way, if you can take the Minnesota game, the opening night, and make that game 25%, maybe more winnable, that's a huge deal. And each one of these moments that the Lakers are going to be going through over the course of the season, it's these kinds of things are going to have a huge impact, I think, on the Western Conference generally. When you start to dot all these little moments where, the Lakers catch blank on a back-to-back, or blank catches the Lakers on a back-to-back, LeBron's not going to play, or, we got him right when Ja Morant had a sprained ankle and he missed one of the 6. Like, these little things are going to have a huge impact over the course of the season in terms of how the Western Conference shakes out.
And if, say, it turns out this is a move where they take a step backwards this season in the hopes of having way more flexibility moving forward to better build around Anthony Edwards, if they just feel like, look, we went to the Western Conference Finals, but we ultimately don't believe this is sustainable for a variety of different reasons, basketball, financial, both, whatever. That could still benefit the Lakers, as anybody getting incrementally worse at all, that's helpful for a team like the Lakers that everybody expects to be fighting to possibly get into that top 6. It all adds up.
These are the types of moves, like when you hear Rob Pelinka talking about how trades get difficult or whatever, a lot of fans will be like, well, look at this thing that just happened. The flip side of that is contextually how these trades, I think what's really changing here, as much as Pelinka might use it as sort of a shield to what's happening, is the notion of the context of how these trades happen. And then look, it's not done yet, in part because the rules about how they have to put this thing together, because neither team can take back more money than they send out. So they have to have like Charlotte sign 3 random players to sign and trade deals. Like a lot of stuff has to happen. So this is really I think in a lot of ways like a first very postmodern deal here, and it'll be fascinating to see how this plays out for Minnesota over the course of the season. I mentioned Mitchell Robinson. As soon as this trade went down, a lot of Lakers fans certainly looked at this and said, this might mean Mitchell Robinson is eventually on the move. And his name does pop up in rumors, and it's something that hasn't. Obviously, the Lakers could use a center. Is Mitchell Robinson a viable option for LA? We'll get to that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can enjoy the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's just say you're watching a game and you got a real strong sense how this thing is going to play out, but you just want to confirm your hunches. You can check out the latest stats view, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So you just can have all your information in front of you, streamline, make the best choices, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Plus, as we're talking about getting closer to the 24-25 NBA season kicking off, and our friends at FanDuel have options for you. As of this recording, the Lakers are 35-1 to win the title. Anthony Davis 150-1 for MVP. LeBron 200-1. Anthony Davis is also 25-1 for Defensive Player of the Year. Dalton Knecht 10-1 for Rookie of the Year. Max Christie 150-1 for Most Improved Player. That's FanDuel.com.
So if you are a Lakers fan who would like to see the Lakers put Anthony Davis once again in the front court with a more traditional big body rim protector rebounder type guy, 7-footer Mitchell Robinson on the New York Knicks, it kind of fits that bill. I would say, if you doesn't make a ton of money, averages close to 10 rebounds a game, without playing more than 30 minutes, the guy chews up the boards. Like there's a lot going on here that people like. Good rim protector, blocks a lot of shots. He's for a lot of fans exactly the type of guy that would fit. And so when this trade happened, Andy, or is happening, we'll presume, anything that seems like it might put Robinson on the block is something that's going to get the attention of Lakers fans.
Yeah, I mean, between Karl-Anthony Towns coming in, and that he's going to be soaking up the majority of center minutes, which could theoretically make somebody like Mitchell Robinson more expendable. I mean, the Knicks are pretty small behind cap.
Right, they're thin up front. So, I mean, I think the notion that they're automatically going to trade him is I agree ahead of the horse. But
there also, too, I think there were some people wondering if Robinson could be on the move just because the Knicks need to find different ways to shed salary. And if there were possibilities there involving Mitchell Robinson, I think between Towns joining the Lakers and these other financial ramifications, we saw on Lakers Twitter, some other Lakers shows, got people wondering about the possibility of Mitchell Robinson. I am personally of the belief that that's a non-starter because he is not expected to be ready till sometime in December at the earliest. You cannot, on this team that is already dealing with Christian Wood out for at least another month and a half or so, and Jared Vanderbilt still unknown exactly when he's going to return, and the Lakers, like the Knicks, small behind their all-star, all-NBA center themselves. You can't move a rotation player, which would be required at minimum, take the rotation player that you
Robinson
think
makes Robinson makes a little over 14 million this
right.
year.
Let's just say it was Gabe Vincent, Cam Reddish, and I don't know, a second or whatever would be required to move Robinson or to accept Vincent's salary.
I would think if you're going to finish, but then
second, first,
this
whatever.
Gets interesting.
Protected first, something like that. This gets back to the problem we've talked about a lot with the Lakers. They do not have an expendable salary of note. It doesn't change the fact that they could use more size, which JJ Redick did his damnedest to try to convince us at the press conference. No, they don't. But off the record, Eric Pincus from Bleacher Report was informed, yeah, they kind of do.
Here's the thing. I think if you believe that Austin Reeves can play sort of a point guardish role, you have LeBron, you have obviously D'Angelo Russell, you have if you could do this for Vincent, I would consider that. The interesting part though too becomes it's not going to be Vincent and Cam Reddish and you get Mitchell Robinson. There's going to have to be draft assets attached to that. I would think that the Knicks would insist on, because Mitchell Robinson, while injured, is certainly a more impactful player than those guys. And young guy, sure, again, block shots, all that stuff. So if you have to put a first round pick, protected or otherwise, it doesn't, you're still sending it out the door. And you no longer have the control over that thing. So it starts to get into that interesting space that we were talking about last week, where you have to decide big swing where you're going to need all the picks you put together. Do you want to break it up and go individually, see how that works? Is Mitchell Robinson worth using one of those things where he is under contract for next year at even less than he's making now? So you would get this year and next out of that. Is that how you want to do it? I mean, I think that's an interesting question. And there's, then do you believe that you have enough, whether it's Jalen Hood-Schifino, do you, Rob Pelinka, again, hyping the heck out of Austin Reeves, including some of the ball handling and stuff like that he was doing over the, in the summertime. This is Pelinka talking to 710, seeing Austin in some of these scrimmages, his confidence with the ball is something that has really stood out, and I'm excited for our fans to see. You look at the evolution of players, and I don't compare players around the league, but
Oh, Rob.
I don't compare players around the league, but let me go down this path right now. I don't compare players around the league, but you look at a great player like Jalen Brunson and the jump he had from his Dallas days to New York. Is there that delta? I'm not trying to put expectations like that on Austin Reeves, but you can see players develop in big ways throughout their career. And I'm going to put my tokens down on Austin Reeves to do just that because of the work that he puts in and his fabric and nature. So again, I'm not going to create expectations around a guy to say he's going to make a Jalen Brunson-esque jump, but let me just say he's going to make Jalen Brunson-esque jump. Setting aside the wisdom of saying those things out loud, if you do believe that Reeves can play that ball handling role better this year than he did last year, and you also have D'Angelo Russell and you have LeBron, and you cross your fingers that Jalen Hood-Schifino can give you 10 to 15 a night, minutes, not points, maybe you could, if you thought Robinson was going to be back. But
I need to see Robinson on the floor before
I tend to agree with you, but I could almost be talked into it.
I could be talked into it if I see him on the floor. I cannot be talked into it with a guy that may not be back till December or January at the earliest. But there is that question of whether the Lakers need to get some center, whoever that is.
And that's why, right. That's why that question is why this one is really is one of those things that you really think about.
And it was a question that JJ Redick very clearly did not want to answer during Wednesday's press conference. And we can get into that coming up next. Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. My daughter, she's 13. We bond a lot over music. Right now, it's Frank Ocean. She's obsessed with Frank Ocean. He has not put out an album in about 8 years, but she has heard rumors that he's back in the studio. If he put out an album, it would mean a tour. And I promised her if he does tour, I'll get us tickets. I know they'll be tough to get, but I'm not worried about it because Game Time, where you can actually look forward to finding tickets, they make it easier with features like Game Time Picks that filters out all the confusing, flowery verbiage, and they show you incredible deals on great seats. They save you time. You can see through panoramic seat views exactly what the atmosphere around you is going to be like, the view to the stage, all that stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off.
All right, so the question posed to JJ Redick and Rob Pelinka was whether or not they needed a traditional center on the roster. And, you know, this was a question that was taken, the loophole in the questioning, I will say, was an off-ramp, a potential off-ramp that JJ Redick drove down aggressively to try to get out of having to say, our centers aren't big enough. We need more size. Without trying to disparage the players that he has on the roster. Redick looked for an off ramp, and man, did he aggressively move on to it.
Yeah, this was a question posed to him by Eric Pincus from Bleacher Report. Again, my guest on tonight's Lakers Talk, 710 ESPN, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific. Eric will be on at 8:15 Pacific time. But Eric phrased the question as, like Brian said, the need for a traditional center. And JJ Redick took the question to really get into a semanticsy discussion about, well, what defines a traditional center?
Do traditional centers, Andy, even have a role in today's game?
Right. Like, you know, is Brook Lopez, even though he's really big, is he a traditional center anymore because he shoots threes? And then JJ Redick said that in a lot of ways he doesn't consider Nikola Jokic a traditional center, which is really starting to push what.
I mean, he isn't in the sense that he's also their point guard, but
right. But he plays an awful lot down low, and he's huge, and he is the prototype of somebody that you would look to put into that position. And when you start trying to essentially count the amount of proverbial angels on the proverbial head of the pin, that is where you know you're not even losing the argument because you're trying to avoid having the discussion in the first place. JJ Redick is smart enough to know that even if Eric phrased the question, you want to say a little bit clumsily, he understood what Eric was asking. And the reason that I know JJ Redick understood what Eric was asking is because over the summer, I believe during a summer league game, JJ Redick said we would like to get a big bruising center. Like that's something we would like to add to this team. So he knew what was being asked of him. If you want to be fair to JJ and say that's really more of a question for Rob than for JJ, fine. But there were ways that he could have answered this more believably without throwing the players that he has under the bus.
How? Because here's the thing. I will say, I agree with you that Redick understood what the question was. I agree with you that had the question just been, do you need more size up front? Do you need a larger body up front as opposed to the centers that you have? It would have been a harder question to evade. But I do think it's a hard one to answer because especially when you consider the composition of the roster, if they go find this large body, it means one of the people that's here has to go. And so that I think is the awkwardness that he's trying to avoid.
It's the awkwardness you're trying to avoid, but it's also the way the league works. I think you could say, yeah, we are aware that behind Anthony Davis, we don't have a ton of size. There could be potential matchups where it becomes an issue, but there are other ways where we think we can use the players that we have to our advantage and try to use more speed and skill. I mean, he closed his evasiveness by saying we'll manage which is essentially him saying, yeah, we don't have enough, but we'll figure it out. Again, this was one of the only times where JJ did not feel in control of the presser. And again, he's really good at this stuff. And I think he does it in a way that typically does not feel like BS. Like, I think he's genuinely good at it. This was the only time where it felt like he was trying to BS his way through it, because he was trying so hard not to answer the question.
Well, he was sort of workshopping the answer while he was speaking. And like, I am 100% confident that his hesitation was around what I was just talking about. This notion that, how do I answer this question without sending the signal to my players that they are not what we need? And, you're going into camp next week. Your chances of fixing this problem anytime soon are, well, functionally zero.
Sure.
And so I'm not saying your answer to that question is a nice one, where you sort of include in the answer, they're like, okay, yeah, everybody would love to have a little bit more size. And then you quickly move past it. I think that's a more artful way of doing it than the way that he did.
Debating, is Nikola Jokic a traditional center or not? I mean, you're losing the argument at that point. You just are.
I mean, again, I understand. I don't even know.
Plus,
it's not. Here's the thing. I don't know if he's wrong or not, because it depends on how you define traditional. Like, yes, Nikola Jokic is not a traditional center in the sense that you think of guys who spend their time down in the post. Shaq didn't shoot threes and run the point guard like Nikola Jokic is. But the point isn't whether or not Nikola Jokic is a traditional center, or if Brook Lopez is a traditional center. The point is none of that is relevant. The point is they need more size.
Well,
and so that's the thing. Like, your answer is a nice one, where you can kind of acknowledge and then quickly try to move on and boost your own guys. But I think it gets to, like, with most of the things, and it is a better question for Rob, but with most of the questions around the roster, because nothing is going to happen that's going to change what they are. And Pelinka essentially told you that by saying, we're going to see where we are after 25 or 35 games, which, by the way, I think at this point is the correct answer, so that when you make trades, you're trading into needs that exist rather than guessing.
Well, it's also going to take 20 to 30 games before you even get to December 15th, when you get the widest variety of options anyway.
Sure, of course, all that stuff. But I just think, I even setting aside the logistical questions, I think from a strategic standpoint, it is the right approach. When it's going to take that long, you have to basically say that the players that we have are what we need. We give us a chance to it, and all that kind of stuff. If you're the coach, if you're the GM, you can talk about it in different terms, whatever. But when you're the coach and you're the guy creating the rotations and you can't, before camp starts, make it very clear that you don't think that your roster is what you need it to be. And I think that was what was driving Redick's compulsion to sort of steer away from the correct answer to the question, which is, yes, we need another large body. And the avenue that he took, he thought he saw the right out. And I agree with you. He sort of protested too much and it didn't work. But I get where he's coming from, because it's an unanswerable question in a lot of ways.
Well, I would say this much. I would say this much then. If you are Rob Pelinka and whoever else talks to reporters off the record from the front office or from the team, if you're going to watch your coach tap dance like that, trying to avoid the question, don't then confirm what the reporter was actually asking and what Redick was denying off the record.
Yeah.
At that point, don't say anything contradictory, because then you just make Redick look like a liar.
I think there is some truth to that. Because it's one of these things. It's, in the grand scheme of things, it's inconsequential, because if they go out and make a trade for a big, which they're going to try to do, everyone said, well, nobody's gonna be like, oh gosh darn it, they said before they didn't need that player. Oh my, they will just be like, yeah, they weren't telling. Of course they needed a player. They knew that the whole time. They just didn't want to say it out loud.
Everybody can tell.
Right.
I mean, everybody can just look at the roster.
Right. I could see why they corrected it because it was so obviously not true. But at the same time, it was an unnecessary correction. So, grand scheme of things, not a huge deal. We're talking about backup centers that everyone knows that they need. But, long term, let's see if we can all get on the same page. Excited about Media Day. We'll get into a little bit more of it. I'm sure Rob Pelinka is going to talk more, or people will talk more about Austin Reeves over the course of the day. We'll get into some more of that over the course of the week. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out, talk to over 25,000 subscribers. Make another Locked On podcast your second listen of the day. How about Locked On NBA? We will see everyone tomorrow.